So I have three absolute leaders in the cop light industry right now, and everyone knows Apurture, everyone knows Godox, and a lot of people know Nanlite as well. So these are three companies that create incredibly high quality lighting equipment. And they have different styles of how they actually produce their equipment, and they have different qualities, and obviously they are of different price as well. Now I'm going to do a very basic comparison of these three lights and also go through the output of these and see if there is pretty much any difference between the output. Now you just have to note that the 300B is a bicolor light, so it should have slightly less power due to having the ability to go from 2700 to 6500. So it sort of splits the colors of 6500 with the chips and the 2700 chips and merges them into two. You'll see it. Let's check these bad boys out. So the Apurture 300D Mark II is a high quality LED light kit with a V-mount battery plate. Now it uses the COB technology to produce 5500 Kelvin color temp at the power of 350 watts. Has a rating of 3500 lux of light, and it also employs a 0 to 100% linear curve, which helps get accurate representation at certain percentages. Now the total package weight is 25 pounds and currently is selling for $949 US. The Godox VL300 is their premium cob light with a dual mount V-lock system. Now it also has that Bowens mount, which can be used in multiple different situations with different Bowens mount attachments and diffusers. The VL300 is the cheapest and the lightest of the three, weighing in at about 20.72 pounds and is only 636 US. Lastly, but not least, this is the 300B. Now this is the only bicolor light of the bunch. Now they do sell this in single color cob lights, but I ended up getting the bicolor light, well, mainly because bicolor, in my opinion, is very, very handy to have, specifically with the technology today. Now this temperature ranges from 2700 to 6500 Kelvin, which can be absolutely handy when you're trying to match a particular scene in a set. Now this also includes the dual V-mount pack for external power on the go. Now the total package weight is 23.9 pounds and comes in at about 939 USD. So without further ado, let's get into the output test. And like I said, just note this is not a scientific test. I just use the basic lumetri scopes that I do with a lot of my lighting tests. And let's get into it. So we start at 5% on all three lights, increasing to 25%. Now to 50%. Now up to 75%. Now all three lights are at full power at 100%. Now, I am very surprised with the Nanlite 300B. I really didn't think this was going to keep up considering it is bicolor, but that is really interesting. It did seem to keep up the whole way through. The Apurture 300D Mark II seemed to be a little bit brighter at 5%. But then when it came to 25, 50, 75, and 100, they were all pretty much very similar. Like there was almost no difference in between the three. It was absolutely fantastic. Now, if you did want to get a little bit more power out of these three, you can just buy a Fresnel lens attachment. Now, Fresnel lens attachments are essentially like a giant magnifying glass where you can wind it and you get a really nice spot, or you can wind it and get a really nice flood. This is super handy so if you want to control the spill or aiming the light directly into a particular spot. Now, I must say Apurture dials aren't really well thought of. The Nanlite dials definitely do feel the best. The Godox dials are probably the worst. It's like a little D-pad that you wind around. It's a little bit annoying. I prefer the little knobs that you sort of twist. It's a lot easier and a lot, I suppose, smoother to use as well. And speaking of the control panel, the Godox does have the smallest footprint. It is a very thin and small panel compared to the Nanlite and the Apurture control panels. But the one thing about that is that the Nanlite actually give you a tripod mount that you can chuck onto the light stand, whereas the Godox has this little metal wire hook that you can just chuck it onto the light stand adapter. With the overall build quality, they are all pretty similar. Like the Godox, yes, is the cheapest and it doesn't really feel cheap. The Apurture and Nanlite do feel a touch better when it comes to overall builds quality. But Nanlite is a slightly smaller design, whereas the Apurture comes in second, the Godox is a little bit bigger. There's just minimal difference between the three. Now all three lights, they do come in a really nice hard padded case, which there doesn't seem to be any difference between the three. I mean, there's little bits and pieces that you could probably adjust, but overall, there's nothing to really worry about. They are fantastic cases. So similarly, they are controlled with a remote, or they have their own branded app as well that you control through your smartphone with wireless adjustments. Now this becomes very handy on set, specifically if your crew numbers are quite low and you don't necessarily have time to go over to the other side of the room or over to that light or over to this light. You can just chuck them in different groups and then control them with the remote or the app. It's so much easier. Now, if I had to choose a winner, I probably couldn't. I do personally prefer the Nanlite 300B, mainly for the fact that it is bicolor and the output performance is phenomenal on this thing. I do find that I do use bicolor a lot more because when I do want to put, you know, sunset or sunrise, that 2700 does come in clutch without having to put on a gel over the lens. It does become a little bit difficult when you do have a very big diffuser like this and then you need to put a gel on it. Yeah, putting a gel on that is very difficult. When it comes to stuff on set, you usually use the barn doors anyway, shoot through a diffuser so you can chuck the gel directly onto the barn doors. But yeah, it's really hard to choose a winner. Like I said, they are different qualities, they are different prices, so one thing is for sure, if you did want to buy each one of these, you're going to get a great light regardless. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, hit that thumbs up. That'd be absolutely amazing, guys. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. All right, let's get it.